Pleasant day to each and everyone. This is Jazame and Yora, and for today's video, we will further discuss the topic given to me, which is producing inclusive policy. So without further ado, let us now start this discussion. First and foremost, education plays a vital role in the contemporary and industrialized world, for it opens a lot of doors and opportunities in order for people to become better citizens and get a better job in the future. Given the fact that education is the only key to aid ignorance and an instrument to counter poverty, making education inclusive to all children will serve as a path or way in achieving these goals. Additionally, like all children with disabilities have ambitions and dreams for their futures. Like all children, they need quality education to develop their skills and realize their fullest potential. This is the reason why inclusive education is the most effective way in order to give the children a fair chance to go to school and learn and develop the skills they need to thrive. Accordingly, inclusion starts with acceptance and embracing the diversity. We cannot deny the fact that in inclusive classrooms, it is filled with diverse learners. And when we say diverse learners, different personalities, attitudes, behaviors, strengths, weaknesses, and even different challenges they encountered are expected to be present. These differences might have rooted on the cultures that assumes those perspectives of learners. And in order for a simultaneous paradigm shift to happen among its education stakeholders, like teachers, staffs, administrators, and other educational personnel, the school must first create a new culture. According to UNESCO 2005, it is realistically acknowledges that a societal change of attitude doesn't need to be initially present in a community before the inclusion can be fully practiced. Instead, it must be viewed as perspective or an ideal that needs to be worked upon. Just recently, the pre-service curriculum was restructured so that those special needs education units will not only be given to those educators who are major in special education, but other education majors as well. This is to ensure that all the education stakeholders can have a thorough understanding through the needs of all children in order to provide adequate accommodations to them. Going on, there are some list of possible steps that educators can take to facilitate a much needed societal shift and inform policy. And these are the following. So first, we have involve other sectors of society. For an inclusive setup to truly be successful, active involvement of the entire community must be ensured, not just only limit on training and campaign on home, school, and departments for social welfare and health. The purpose for this is to enable people to gain knowledge and be sensitized about the needs of all people with disabilities. It is the role of educational institutions to make this accessible to the community for their meaningful and active participations. This can be a way to view the assets that communities can bring to the educational processes. This only means that the community's involvement in a successful setup for inclusive education implies both enhancing the resources for education and taking part in defining and guiding the educational programs. This idea is actually open for everyone, regardless of their trainings and exposures from different fields. They might be into business, or there are engineers, architects, and any other professions in their fields. This is to ensure that all people in the community are aware and will be sensitive when it comes to the PWD community, or should I say, people with special needs. Next, we have collaborate. Speaking of collaboration, this is very crucial in creating a program or creating a new legislative bill for the PWD community, especially that each members in inclusive educational team have their strengths and weaknesses. In fact, according to Del Coro Tiangco 2014, general education teachers are trained in general education curriculum, but they would not know how to teach and manage children with additional needs. Whereas, special needs education teachers are so much equipped to handle atypical behaviors, but they would not also know much about the general education curriculum. That is to say that because of the specializations of the teachers, they cannot cover many areas as much as they want to. They can only teach to the scope that they master and excel. This is now the reason why the pre-service education curriculum was restructured, in order to guarantee an inclusive program that could cover many areas as possible. True collaboration is much needed. Now we have include transitions in planning. An abrupt systematic change that is not well planned or that regards practices whether existing or implied may hinder the shift to inclusion and may cause resentment from all stakeholders, which will eventually make the operation fail. Consequently, including those excluded is not a simple thing. It requires time, and plans should be managed effectively. Without an ease transition, the shift might only be omitted. In order for this not to happen, current practice have to be respected and honored so that we could smoothly facilitate a gradual shift into inclusive education. So both an AINSCO 2002 recommended that schools should reflect in their current policies and practices to check their readiness for an inclusive setup. They even devised a questionnaire that would help administrators, faculties, and other stakeholders comprehensively gather baseline data in examining different aspects of schools and delivery of its services. Specifically, schools may look at the following. We have student admissions, accessibility to utilities and facilities, supports available to students, parents, and school personnel, learner accommodations, discriminatory incidents, number of bullying cases, faculty and staff promotions. So these are the things that needs to be considered whenever the school will set an inclusive education. Let us first discuss the students' admissions. In the implementation of inclusive education, the identification students with special needs must be included to factors that needs to be considered. They must know first who are those learners that needs to be taken care because of their special needs. Next, we have accessibilities to utilities and facilities. This involves designing systems to optimize access and opportunities to everyone wherever possible. It may include reducing and overcoming the barriers that might occur in the process, which will make it harder for the children to take part in any activities. Just like what you see in the pictures. Those floorings, it should be floors that those special needs children could easily take way. For instance, also in online learning, we have a blended learning. Not providing captions on materials like supplemental videos of the discussion is a disadvantage to anyone watching in a noisy environment and learners who have hearing impairment. When it comes to other facilities like buildings and other materials, those should not have anything that might harm the learners with different special needs and not hard for them to access or use. Next, we have supports available to students, parents, and school personnel. A setup for inclusive education won't be successful without supports coming from different agents. And within the school, there may be various sources of support for teachers and to children. It could be educational assistance. Next, we have learner accommodations. So within the class, it is also very important to consider the equipments and other materials that allows an individual with special needs to gain access to complete a task. All the things and ways or approach for them should be put or applied in a classroom so that, despite from their disabilities, they can still accomplish a task with the proper accommodation according to their needs. Next, we have exclusionary or discriminatory incidents. Given the fact that there will be some learners with special needs, we cannot just neglect the possibility that they might be discriminated because of their situation. In an inclusive education, this is one of the crucial factors that needs to be addressed and create a plan for it to be avoided. The school must have a way or a specified plan on how to combat discrimination to the learners with special needs, so that the learnings of those students won't be affected and won't add to any negative impact to their lives. Next is we have number of bullying cases. Before the implementation of inclusive education, the school needs to assess first the cases of bullying that might happen in the future. Although the school cannot guarantee a full control over this issue, they still need to think and implement some alternative ways to somehow avoid it as much as possible. That is why the inclusion of education must not be abruptly enforced because it requires time and lots of preparations. Next, we have faculty and staff promotions. Teachers plays big role and pivotal role for special education. They serve as advocates for students with disabilities and special needs. They help them develop into their fullest potential with the help also of other staffs and faculties of the school. For their immense contribution, they also deserve some promotions at the end of the day, and the school must be ready for that. Preparing a plan for the services of the staffs and faculties is one of the considerations to make. Promotion is one of the ways of taking care of them. As a conclusion, the implementation of inclusive education should have some policies and must consider lots of things in order for the shifting to work smoothly. It can only be successful if it is well prepared, practiced, and managed carefully.